thing. The streets were dull with the changing lights. We grabbed lunch at the bowling alley, and it was still sitting there in a lump in my intestines. I couldn't even remember what I'd eaten. "Where next?" I asked. Fish shrugged, checking his watch. "Melody said there was this party down at the lake. Want to check it out?" "Maybe," I said, unsure. "There's nowhere else to look, Ben, I guess. I think Kat's going to be there." I pretended to ignore this. "I just hope he doesn't do anything stupid." Fish got to his feet. He's a big boy. We walked over to the SkyTrain station a block down the street. Luck was with us. A train was pulling up as we climbed the steps to the platform. "You know where you're going?" I asked. "Always," he said, stepping into the half-empty train car. Typical Fish. Even if he didn't know exactly where he was going, where he ended up was where he had meant to be. It was an art form, really, the way he got through life. "Who's going to be there?" I asked, sitting across from a guy who smelled that like he'd last bathed Tuesday of the previous year. "Some of the guys from the soccer team, I think." "Don't sweat it, Conrad." Fish smiled over at the guy who offered him a piece of cantaloupe he was eating with a plastic spoon. Fish just shook his head pleasantly. Fish, unlike Stan and me, had about 5 or 6 groups of friends that he bounced back and forth around. Everyone likes him, and I could tell he was eager to be around more people right now. He was like a dog that way, liked to move in a pack. But any time I'd been included with his other friends, I felt out of place. I could see him changing like a chameleon. It didn't matter when Stan was around. We'd just drift off and catch up with Fish another day. But Stan wasn't here, and I didn't feel like going home yet. At the beach, there was only a handful of people, but Fish scoped out the ones he knew. I tagged along as he rushed to greet them, moving tall and sure across the pebbly beach. "You guys remember Ben, right?" Their eyes skimmed me quickly, blankly. "Andrew, Jamal," I nodded, grunting hello. "Care for a beverage?" Andrew moved to the edge of the woods where a cooler sat, cleverly disguised as a molting shrub. "Great camouflage," I said, taking a can of soda. Fish grabbed a beer, downed it in one stream, and crushed the can, tossing it into the trash can. "I hear you're a ballerina," Andrew said, smirking sideways at Jamil. "Used to be," Fish said, attempting, I guess, to defend me. "Male dancers aren't called ballerinas," I informed them, resenting having to explain myself again. "Sorry, my mistake," Andrew said, wandering off with a smirk plastered on his face. I felt my skin twitch across my face as I tried to keep a neutral expression, but it reminded me too much of Claude, and I wondered if I'll always be a target for idiots. "Mel's here," Fish whispered excitedly, "and Kat. Let's go over there." "In a minute, you go." "You sure?" he asked, but he was already on his way. Someone had cranked up the music. I moved over to a log and watched from a distance. Fish's lope turned into a swagger the closer he got to the girls. Something about the magnetic force field, I figured. He really was something to see. You could throw him in a tank full of sharks, and he'd have them synchronized swimming within 30 seconds. He was charming. He fit. I've never seen him flustered during the entire time I'd known him, except maybe with Stan. I had a good view of Kat. She was wearing jean shorts and a rusty red sweatshirt with bright white socks that stood out against her long tan legs. She was so pretty it made my teeth hurt. People were starting to dance. It was a good song, and I could feel myself respond to the music. It should be so easy to walk over to Kat, ask her to dance. I mean, that was the one thing I knew how to do. So do it, I told myself. 10, 12 steps, and I'd be there. I could ask her, or maybe just take her elbow and lead her to the clearing. I could take her into my arms. It was a slow dance now. The moon was almost full. The dimpling path of silver light spread out across the water. "You're such a good dancer," she might say. Maybe I'd move into one of those Fred Astaire routines we'd learn in the academy. The girls always said I was easy to follow. "Where'd you learn those moves?" I wouldn't have to say anything. Just let our bodies flow to the beat. My hand on her back. Maybe I'd try a dip at the end. Or would that be overkill? Maybe I'd try to kiss her. Mid-daydream, I noticed she was looking back at me. How long had I been staring? She probably thought I was stalking her. I lifted the can up, drank until the soda was gone, except for the part that splashed on the bridge of my nose. Very cool. I wiped my face with my sleeve, and when I looked again, she was gone. I craned my neck, standing to see where she was. Then I saw her. She was dancing, at the edge of the group, by herself, it seemed. Her body moved slowly, unselfconsciously, and the wind lifted her hair, blowing it softly across her face. She pushed it back with one fluid motion, smiling. I looked around, but there was no one behind me. It was entirely possible, then, that she had been smiling at me. As coolly as I was able, I let my eyes find her again. Now her back was to me. I wondered if she knew I was watching. I should go to her. I knew that, but I also knew I wouldn't. What if she laughed at me? She wouldn't. What if I tripped? I might. What if I just got over to her and someone else stepped in? Somebody a whole lot better looking. Somebody a whole lot more cool. Highly likely. Her body moved with the music, and she looked directly at me. She smiled again, but it was more tentative this time, as if she wasn't sure. And I turned and walked away. By the time I reached the trees, I felt someone behind me, and then a hand brushed my shoulder. I checked hopefully, but it was just Fish. Where are you going? The party's just starting. I'm not much in a party mood, I said. You want to come to my house? Fish squirmed. Man, everyone's here. Yeah, you're right. But I'm gonna go. You sure? Fish asked. But I could tell he was itching to get back to the action. Yeah. I watched him rejoin the group. Within seconds he was dancing jerkily, like the guy who forgot his sandals on the hottest day in August. He really looked out of place on the dance floor, but it didn't seem to matter. It occurred to me that it wasn't wrong for a guy to dance, just to dance well. It was okay to dance, but not to be a dancer. Or maybe it was more personal than that. Maybe it was just wrong for me. Maybe there was a big red cosmic arrow pointing at me. Attack! As I watched, Fish moved in his distinctive style, closer to Kat. He said something to her, and she laughed. He made it look so easy. My stomach clenched like it was about to be hit, and I could taste something bitter, metallic in my mouth. I couldn't watch anymore. I walked back through the darkening woods up the street. Fish was Fish. Fun to be around and living proof, in a way, that I wasn't a total loser. But he was like one of those imaginary friends you have when you're little. It had more to do with what you hope for in a friend than what it actually was. If I tried to picture him and me in 20 years from now, just shooting the breeze together, I couldn't. Fish was a now friend. But Stan was the real thing. He was gone. I could still see him in grade 2, with that bandana around his head and his tree branch sword. He was still out there somewhere, fighting invisible enemies. I was at the kiosk, buying my ticket for the SkyTrain, when I noticed a guy, maybe a year or two younger than me, hunched over in the corner with his back to me. I had to pass him to get to the escalator, and when I did, I could hear him breathing really heavily, as if he was crying. I almost ignored him, but turned back before my foot hit the first moving step. You okay? No answer. Buddy, you okay? I moved so that I could see his face. It was red and blotchy, even in the shadowy light. He cleared his throat. Some guys, they took my money. I can't get home. He managed to get out. He was really scrawny, dressed only a pair of shorts and t-shirts that looked like it had been through a couple of older brothers. They took my jacket, too. Then he stopped and took another deep breath. I dug through my pocket, pulled out a crumpled 5. Here, take this. He looked down at the money, reaching for it slowly, then put it into a machine to buy a ticket. He offered to give me the change, but I shook my head. You might need to make a call. Don't worry about it. I stepped onto the escalator, and he followed. I got those allergies, you know, he said quietly. Yeah, pollen's bad this year, I said, not knowing if the pollen was good, bad, or non-existent. The guy sniffed once more, but he seemed to be getting it together. Before long, a train pulled up, and we walked inside. He sat beside me until it was his stop. You okay? I asked, as he stood to leave. He looked uncertainly out at the cheerless platform, but nodded. I live close by. Hey, thanks. No problem, I said, as the door closed behind him. I saw my reflection in the window, blue and transparent, like you could almost see bones and muscles and blood moving around. The guy just got mugged, and he tried to pretend his allergies were making him cry. I tried to remember the last time I cried. I couldn't. Probably back when I was a kid and stubbed my toe or something. Something small, but crying always seemed to make it just a little better. At least it was a way to say, hey, getting hurt really sucks. Hey, look at this. I'm wounded here. I'm suffering. I wondered what I'd do if some guy grabbed me, took my money and jacket. Would I pretend to have allergies? Probably. As the train sped along towards the narrow bridge that spanned the river, all you could see on either side was the expanse of black sky and below the even darker water. It was as though we were moving headlong into nothing, and suddenly I was angry. I was angry at the faceless guides who had beaten that guy back there, at Fish for dancing with Kat when I couldn't, angry at Stan for taking the easy way out, and angry at myself for having to go back home where I wasn't needed. The train reached the end of the line. If I didn't move, I'd just end up back to where I'd already been. End of chapter 9.